Hey everyone, it is Jaime Jo Wright here for another MadLit Musings podcast. And today we have with us for the first time ever, Mary Connealy. Hey Mary, how are you?
There. Thanks for having me on, Jamie.
I am so excited to have you on because I love your books and there's nothing more fun than a good historical romance with Western flair, and we get to talk about that today.
Cowboys, let's go.
Yes, cowboys. You have a new book coming in June, and it's called The Laws of Attraction. Tell us a little bit about it. This is book 2 in a series, right?
Yes, it is. And this is, to me, this book, I mean, I love all three books, but this book is sort of the inspiration for the book because Wyoming, which is it's so interesting and funny to me, Wyoming was the first state in the Union to give women the right to vote.
Was it really?
Why? Why Wyoming?
Because they're
It's
progressive.
Sure, nothing more modern than Wyoming. And 9,000 people in the state total when they're trying to become a territory, total in the whole state, and 5-to-1 women, 5-to-1 men. So it's all a decision made by men, endorsed, supported, backed by men to let women have the right to vote. So
That is fascinating.
it is. And there was something cool about their governor. He was one of those guys. He thought this was right after the Civil War. He thought black people should be allowed to vote, women should be allowed to vote, Native Americans should be allowed to vote. And anytime they challenged him on it, he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get them in here too and let them vote. Come on, let's let them vote. So,
Wow.
and women's suffrage was a lot more than voting. They
Okay.
were allowed to serve on juries. They were allowed to be appointed to offices that formerly were close to them. They were allowed to run for office. And my story, the first woman justice of the peace was in Wyoming. And if you look at Wyoming history, they had the first governor, they had the first state senators, they had the first nationals, senators and house congressmen. It's just strange. They were just way ahead of the curve. And then when they finally allowed to become a state, the government, the United States government said, yeah, okay, it's time for you to become a state, but you got to take the vote away from women. And they did the same thing to Utah, who had also given women suffrage, and Utah's like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And they took the right away to vote. And Wyoming's just like, no, we'll stand territory forever. We will stand in the Union 100
Wow.
years, but we will not come in without our women. So it's just really cool, fun stories to read about that. And the first woman justice of the peace, possibly in the world, certainly in the United States, was from Wyoming. And my book is the second woman justice.
I love it. I love it.
So it was just it's just an interesting history to read, and I just really I love historical research just because there's just always great stories. So my heroine is a the wife of a former lawman, the widow of a former lawman,
Okay.
and she's in Wyoming and she wants to be a seamstress. And there are no women. And a very few women they're like, yeah, we can sew our own dresses, forget it.
Right. I don't need a seamstress. We're in Wyoming. Come on.
Seamstress. And she's like, but I really like the state. But I really like sewing pretty dresses. So she's kind of in a quandary, and she finds out a cowboy comes in and asks if she can make him a pair of chaps.
Aha.
She's like, no, I don't know. And he's like, well, here's an old pair. Try. Here's a piece of leather. Try. Before she knows, she's got this booming business making chaps. Everybody wants a pair. 9,000 guys in the state. Somebody's making chaps. And she's like, I hate making chaps. On the other hand, I am the richest person in town. So, she's just all desperate to try to find someone who'll let her make her dress. And in the meantime, she's quite the entrepreneur. And somebody wants her to make him a cowboy hat. And she's like, I'm afraid I know I don't be able to do it. I don't want to start that.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, she's a fun character. And then widowed homesteader moves to town with 3 young half-grown daughters. And every one of them needs a dress.
Aha.
So she's like, well, let's work a deal here, And so anyway, she gets to make dresses for these little girls. And then because her husband was a lawman,
Okay.
they have a series of stagecoach robberies. These really, really vicious, ruthless stagecoach robberies, and they bring in some dead bodies from a stagecoach holdup, and the sheriff's just like, I've really never solved a crime before. I find a guy standing over a dead body with a smoking gun, and that's it.
That's
how I
it.
solved. She's like, well, she's got all these great lawman advice, and before you know it, she's like helping solve this crime. And then their justice of the peace is going to move away, and the sheriff says, will you do it? What? It is farther from sewing dresses than ever. But she takes the job because she loves Wyoming. She loves being able to vote. She loves the idea of a woman doing it, not her personally, but
It's like, I'll support any woman you want to be the justice of the peace, just not me.
all right, I'll do the job. And then, then people start trying to kill her. How
all the minor details of life. You're trying to be killed, you're hunted.
so anyway, so she's just a fun character. She's really good at the law stuff, but it's not what she wants to do.
Yeah.
And she absolutely doesn't want to get married again, but she does kind of want those girls. She can't figure out a way to get them without marrying him. And so the dilemma. So, because her first husband was very nice. So she's kind of over marriage. But anyway, she's that's my story. And then the gunfighting and the horse riding and the galloping and screaming all begin. That's how I write.
Galloping and screaming might be the best description of your books I've ever heard.
Involving a Stetson. That's I always think I solve all my sagging plot points by shooting someone.
Well, yeah, right.
That picks everything up, and then I say that to people who are writing Amish, and they just act like that's not going to work for me, Mary.
Hey, I totally relate to it. Anytime there's
but I actually prefer if there's gunfire.
Oh, right. Yeah. Anytime there's a leg in my story, I'm like, throw in a dead body and
let's just have a bullet whiz by our head. We'll figure out where it came from.
Exactly. We'll figure out what happened later.
We're hiding and that's the basic premise. The second woman justice of the peace in American history is I love that. Yeah, she's great. She's way too, compared to the first one, who was really a grizzly old woman, pretty tough, pretty much of a suffrage. Mine's a very pretty young blonde woman who's she finds it in her to be pretty tough. So,
well, you know what? I think a lot of women back in those days had to find it in them to be tougher than they may have originally planned.
Yeah. And I also think, we always talk about women and the petticoats and all this stuff to do to proper. I think those women got way out in the country. I think they probably just kind of did what they wanted, and their husbands probably perfectly sport. Yeah, go ahead and wear a pair of pants. It's stupid for you to ride the horse in that dress. If we're going to town, maybe crack the dress out, but otherwise, not allowed. So
yeah, I have a feeling the way of the corset went away really fast out on the Western territories for sure.
Yeah. So.
Oh man, well, I love it. That sounds super fun and adventurous, and I love the fact that there's danger in it and all of that too. Because that makes a good Western, right?
What's the point? There's no book if there's not something going on.
Right, exactly. There's got to be a bigger plot than wanting to sew dresses, although that's a good start.
That is a good start. It's she doesn't get to make too many dresses, but she finally gets to make some for these girls. And then she's trying to teach them to sew because their mom is dead. And it's wonderful. So
Oh, I love that. Now, this is book 2 in a series. So does it stand alone on its own? Like, could I read this one without reading book 1?
I think it does. I think they all stand alone, but I think they might be a little more fun if you know the other stories, because she's best friends with the girl who's the star of book 1, and then best friends with the woman who's in book 3. So they walk through the book and they have a part in it, but the story itself stands alone.
Okay.
And these stagecoach robbers, they're kind of an overarching thing from book 1 to book 3, but we solve our own little section of the crime right here. I
love it.
Turns out there's more trouble left to become from book 3, but for a while it looks like the trouble's over.
That's funny. I love that. So, okay, tell me a little bit about stagecoach robberies, because it seems like with a lot of Western books and movies, there's always a stagecoach robbery, but they were pretty prevalent back then, weren't they?
I think so. Especially this is Wyoming. There's gold. I mean, not here in my particular town, but this this gang has just learned to be, yeah, they usually stagecoach robbers, they would come in, ride in masked, and they didn't necessarily not kill anyone, but their goal wasn't to leave a bunch of dead bodies. They're just trying to steal the strong box and rob the passengers.
Mhm.
But these guys are ruthless. They do not leave witnesses. And one of the reasons is because they're known men in the area. They're respectable men who are doing this on the side, so they can't let anybody see them. So they've never left a witness. So
Got it.
they pick their spot. They pick an uphill slope, so those stagecoaches slowed, and they've got a place they can run down and attack. And anyway, one guy comes in alive from this, and he's all shot up, but they thought he was dead, but he's alive, and they're trying to keep him alive. And Nell, my heroine, is like kind of like instructing everybody. For one thing, she's decided somebody local. There's a reason they're not leaving witnesses. They're not just evil, cruel. They don't want anyone to see him. So she thinks we can't leave him alone ever in the doctor's office. And we can't leave him alone with one person because we don't know who it is.
Right.
So there's always two people. And it's just, I mean, this is all her just being savvy in law enforcement. So anyway.
And you know what that means then? That means that if she's savvy, you're savvy because you're the author that created her.
I actually think maybe I'm writing characters who I wish I was like, not that I'm really. But sure, I'm savvy. Let's go with that.
We'll go with that, Mary. I think that fits you. So you've set these books in Wyoming, and a lot of your books take place out west, right? Like the majority of them are set western.
Yes, they are. And I've just had to force myself to get away from Texas because it's so knee jerk, that's just where I want. But I really like the Rocky Mountains. They're almost a character, avalanches and blizzards and all that stuff. In Texas, your main characters are just, it's hot.
It's hot. So hot. There's a rattler. There's a cactus.
Yeah, but I need somebody to be able to fall off a mountain once in a while. I need cliffhangers. So I kind of like set them in Wyoming. The one I'm doing right now is in Idaho, which I just never done. I've done Montana and Colorado. The last series I did was in California, which I'd never done before, but like around Yosemite, and that wasn't really that good of a character of there's mountains, but there's no blizzards. It's just I just try to do something different once in a while because I am afraid of being too much the exact same. So
right.
That's what I'm always thinking. Oh, I haven't done that one before, so
I like that.
Time, and I haven't done Texas for a while, so maybe I should get back to Texas. I don't know.
I was gonna say you might have some readers going, "Hey, we need to see some Texas now."
Texas is cowboys. Come on.
Yeah, or maybe go over to New Mexico because we don't see a lot of New Mexico, and that's where I grew up visiting with my grandparents. Lived there.
I did in New Mexico a while back, but I haven't done that. So
there you go. Yeah. There's always adventure. I mean, to me, New Mexico is very adventurous, but that's because I grew up playing there with my grandparents lived there, and my cousin would make me go black widow hunting, and it wasn't my preferred form of recreation, playing with black widows, but we did it.
Hunting's bad enough, finding one, that's just terrifying.
Oh yeah, well, the first memory I have is she found this black widow in the horse barn and got one of those metal fence posts, and reaches up with it and twists the web until the spider's on the end of it. And then she goes, "Oh, we need a jar to put the spider in." I'm like, why are we keeping this? And she goes, "I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the house and get a jar." And right as she's leaving the horse barn, she turns and goes, "Oh, just be cautious because they can jump." Like, oh, okay. I'll just stand here with a poisonous spider.
Now I'm going to die. So
yeah, I know. It's a miracle I'm here talking to you today, Mary.
Oh my gosh, black widows.
Yeah, they're precious.
Rattlesnake, but I haven't done a black widow yet.
There you go. There. I gave you a new story idea. You can put a black widow in one of your books. Oh, I love it. So do you, I know you were telling me at the beginning of before we came on the podcast that you live kind of in the Midwest area. Have you ever lived out west?
I haven't. I live 10 miles from where I was born. I mean, I'm just the most deeply rooted person you've ever seen. So we're living in my husband's grandfather's house.
Oh, wow.
It's 100-year-old farmhouse, and that's more charming than it sounds. It's really kind of old, and but it keeps the rain off our head. What are you gonna do?
I was just say you're dry in the winter and you're dry in the
That's
summer,
right.
so
I'm warm in the winter, cool in the summer. So it's just I'm good. I'm settled here.
oh,
So.
that's great. Okay, so you write for Bethany House Publishing, which is a Christian publisher. Do you have elements of faith that work through your story too?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I one of the main things I'm trying to deal with in this series is, and I think that's kind of a recurring theme, is whom shall I fear?
Oh,
These people who face danger, and these women, and they kind of have to come to a place like, okay, you can do whatever you want to me, in up to and including death, but you can't touch my soul. I'm
right.
safe in the Lord. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, and so that's my whom shall I fear. That's sort of, because of course there's plenty to fear, and there's plenty of danger, and they're trying not to let worry run their lives, and just them trying to come to terms with not being afraid even in the middle of terrible danger. So
Right, right.
that's what I would say.
No, I like that. And I think back in that time period, if I'm not mistaken, in a sense, in a lot of those Western towns, you're sort of on your own as far as your biblical and faith were
Well, we
concerned.
have
Because
a pastor in town. We have a parson. Excuse me.
no, that's all right.
He's the current justice of the peace.
Okay,
He's getting his mother-in-law, and his wife wants to go back to Nebraska because his mother-in-law's if husband has died, and she is in kind of she just can't take care of herself exactly anymore. So he's leaving. That's just not important, but that's the reason he's leaving. And that's why we open up the justice of the peace job. And what was the question? I don't even know.
no, I was just thinking about the fact that back in the Western times, some of those towns didn't have pastors and churches, and you were sort of on your own for your faith.
Some of my characters live so far out, they really
Yeah,
just can't come in. So we try to deal with that. In this particular series, they do come in and they do have church services, but then Parson Blodgett moves away, and now we've got they sing they're in the schoolhouse. They don't have a church, so they sing on Sunday mornings, and they read the Bible, and they just talk, but they don't really have but they do have organized, to that point, church services. But I have lots of them where they just like, wow, I live way out. I've not been in a church before.
right, right. So you have Nell, who has to become the justice of the peace, and you have a town without a pastor who's now left town, and stagecoach robbers, and a widower with daughter. I mean, you've got the whole cast going on here.
I got trouble from every possible angle.
I
So
love it. I love it. Well, I think readers will be really, really happy to connect with your characters. And you have a third book is it coming out this year too?
yes, and it's coming out in October. That's book 3 in the Wyoming Sunrise series, and that is Marshalling Her Heart.
Okay.
And she's all the characters in this book are non-traditional careers. So
Okay.
my first one is a lady blacksmith, and my second one is a lady justice of the peace, and my third one is a lady rancher. And I write so many lady ranchers that most people who read me think that's not non-traditional. Well, not for me, but in real life.
Yeah, in
So,
real life, if you look historically, it's non-traditional. So yes.
women out there ranching probably back then. But anyway, so that's the 3 books, and the next one, she's the lady rancher, and it's called Marshalling Her Heart, and she's they're using the U.S. Marshals come in and use her ranch as a base to try to find these stagecoach robbers.
Okay.
Because of where it's located, they think it's a good location, and she's got to figure out how to let all these guys come in and do their investigating and still keep her ranch running. And the foreman is a former marshal, which is one of the reasons they thought of him, because his brother's still a U.S. Marshal, so they knew that he knew his brother was in that area. So So yeah, so that's the love interest, her and her foreman, and she's a very successful rancher, and now she's got lawmen crawling all over her ranch, and she doesn't like it very well, but she does want these stagecoach robberies to end. So
Well,
because
yeah.
the end of the book, that book two, it looks like they've solved everything, and then boom, here they are
Boom.
again.
Something happens.
Here we go again.
I love it. I love it. So, if readers want to find out more about you and find out more about your books and be able to follow this journey through the Wyoming sunrise, where do they go to find out more about all of this?
Well, maryconnealy.com, which the trick there is spelling it, which just good luck. They'll figure it out. And I also following me on Amazon.
Mhm.
Then you get an email to your inbox box when a new book comes out. And I'm just in all the usual places, Twitter and BookBub and Goodreads and all that stuff. And, you know, look for me on Baker Book House too. They've got all my books listed there.
They
So
do. They do. Awesome. Mary, this has been so much fun to chat Western. Now I want to go out west and do some camping and hiking
oh,
and
I don't know about me and camping and hiking. But we went as far as Laramie, Wyoming one
okay.
time, as
Yep.
far west as I've gone. And I've got a daughter in Denver, so that
Ah,
takes. There's not much cowboy in town in Denver where she
not in
lives.
Denver, but you can find them on the outskirts and getting out
Yeah,
outside of Denver.
babies there, so I tend to not get out of town. I just play with my grandbabies.
Sounds like a good choice. I think that's a good choice. Oh, well, thanks for being with us, Mary, and maybe we will talk to you again in October when the third book comes out.
Great, I had a good time, Jamie.
All right, thanks.
All right.